Hey there, I'm Amy from thecrazycraftlady.com. Welcome back for some more fall crafts. Today we're sharing some brand new upcycle projects. I'm really excited to share with you a painting project that shares three of my favorite painting, Mod Podge, and image transfer techniques, as well as what started as just a simple dollar store project turned into a brand new wreath for my door. And then we're going to turn some paper bags into a fun garland for fall. Let's get making. Okay friends, be sure to save those paper grocery bags because we're going to use them to make some fall leaves. I used 2 Target bags for this project and just the parts of the bag that did not have the red printing on them. So maybe Target bags were not the best choice because there is a lot of printing. So I mainly just used the side parts around the bullseye. You can go to my blog and download this leaves template. It has 3 different size leaves on it. There will be a big button there that says download the template here, print it out. You may want to print more than one because they kind of start to fall apart after a while. But just take a pencil and shade all over the back of the template here, covering all the parts of the outline of the leaves. That way you can transfer these leaves onto the paper bag. You just set the template on top of a piece of paper bag. I kind of held it up to the light to make sure I could get it as close to the edge as possible so I wasn't wasting very much of the non-printed part of the paper bag. And then take like a pen or a pencil and then just trace over that leaf outline and it'll transfer the pencil markings right onto the paper bag. And then you can follow that outline and cut out your leaf. So fair warning, this took a while. So I did this on a Saturday night, so that's why my background is a little different and the video is a little shaky because I did this at our dining table and I set up my laptop with a movie and I just cut out a bunch of leaves for an hour and a half. And then once you have all your leaves cut out, I think I did 11 or 12 in all 3 sizes. So 11 large, 11 medium, 11 small. Dunk them in a little bit of water and let them sit for 30 to 60 seconds until they kind of start absorbing water. I started to get a workflow going where I would take one leaf out and stick another leaf or 2 underneath the ones that were already in the water. And then you just wring all the water out, and this is going to create some texture in that paper. So these look a little bit more realistic and not just like cutouts. So dunk it in the water, squeeze it out 1 or 2 times until you get the level of wrinkliness. That's a word, wrinkliness. I just made it up. That you like for your leaves, and then lay everything out on a layer of paper towels until the leaves have completely dried. And then once I had all of my leaves dried, I would make a little stack of 1 of each size of leaf. And then I just took a little safety pin or like a sewing pin, and I poked a couple holes right at the base of the stack of leaves. So a couple of holes right next to each other to make a larger hole that you can then run your floral wire through. On this project, I used a combination of 2 types of floral wire. One regular old gold floral wire, and then this other floral wire that I ordered off Amazon. It has like a paper coating around it, which I really love, so I'm glad I have a giant spool of it so I can make lots of crafts with it. So run the 2 pieces of wire through the stack of leaves, fold over about a 2-inch tail, and then twist the wires together to secure the leaves onto the wire. And then cut maybe a 2-foot length of the 2 wires and then twist them together all the way down the whole way. And then you're just gonna make a bunch of these and then stagger the leaves and coil all of the stems together to make a little garland. So here's my finished garland with a stack of pumpkins, and I think it turned out really cute. And I love the stem, the combination of the gold and like the natural brown paper on the stem. I think it looks really nice together. To start, you'll want to grab just a sheet of tissue paper, like gift wrap tissue paper, plain white, and trim it down so it's just a little bit smaller than a sheet of printer paper. So if printer paper is 8.5 by 11, maybe trim this down to about 8 inches by 10.5 inches. And then I like to use painter's tape on this. I just typically use painter's tape when I'm feeding stuff through my printer, but just center that tissue paper right on the paper and then tape it all the way around. I guess there's two schools of thought on this, and maybe you just need to get to know your printer the best. You can either tape it at the top and the bottom, or you can tape it all the way around. But really the most important part here is to make sure that the tissue paper is as smooth as possible so this doesn't jam while you're feeding it through your printer. Also, people ask me what type of printer to use. I don't think it matters, just as long as it's your home printer that prints nice color images. If it prints nice color images on regular paper, it'll do the same on tissue paper. I have like an Eco Tank something printer that I really like. I'll link to it below, and it works really well. And I really like it because I can fill individual color cartridges instead of having to replace all three at the same time. But that's just personal preference. And so then you want to prep your scrap wood. So I just grabbed a piece of scrap wood from my basement from a previous project, and I painted the whole thing black. You could do any dark color that you like, navy, dark brown, even a dark wood stain would be fine. And then let that dry and go over it with a lighter color. So this is just a taupe color. Once again, any type of lighter color will do. You just want to distress it up a little bit, just so that the black poking through when you do the crackle finish at the end isn't as stark. But let that completely dry, and then here's my printed image. As you can see, there's a couple little ink stains at the bottom, like it's not always perfect as it goes through the printer. This is a free printable, I will link to it. If you want more free printables, this is part of a set that you can access. It's for my email subscribers, so I will also link to that if you want to have access to all of my seasonal printables. Otherwise, this individual one will just be available in the blog post. It'll be a big green button that says download the printable here. And then you'll just want to trim away all the excess tissue paper. So I prefer to rip it. I feel like you get, with the jagged edges from ripping the tissue paper, it's not as obvious when you do the image transfer that it's actually the piece of tissue paper on the wood. So I like to rip it. You just be careful not to rip away any part of the printed image. And then center that on your wood to get an idea of where you do not want to apply Elmer's glue in this next step. I chose to do a crackle finish just around the edge of my scrap wood piece here, but not in the center. You obviously, if you wanted to apply Elmer's glue to this whole surface, you're more than welcome to. This is just, I wanted to do something a little different and a bit more creative. So I just applied glue all the way around the edges of that scrap wood piece, and then smoothed everything out with a 1-inch flat paintbrush. And then let the glue sit for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Do not let it dry all the way, and then very carefully apply a coat of white chalk paint. So for this, I started in the center where there was no glue, which was easiest, and then I used very gentle light brush strokes going from the center to the edge of the scrap wood piece doing my very best to not disturb the Elmer's glue underneath. You don't want it to get all mixed up with the chalk paint. So very light, gentle strokes. In one direction I find is easiest instead of back and forth. And then just to speed up the drying process, I used a heat gun. But as that chalk paint dries, if you've done everything correctly, the chalk paint will crackle and it will allow the black and taupe paint finish underneath to kind of poke through. So that's why it's nice to use a contrasting color as your base coat, so it really shows up as the crackle finish emerges. And then make sure you let that white paint completely dry before moving on to the next step, which is Mod Podge. And so I just applied a little bit of Mod Podge to the center of my scrapwood piece here, just enough to apply my tissue paper image. And for this, I just kind of started in the middle and smoothed outwards. I find it best not to use like a side-to-side motion or a smoothing tool because you will for sure rip this tissue paper. I'm more so kind of tapped and blotted to get all the air bubbles out. If you start in the middle and work your way out to the edges as you tap, you'll have pretty good results. Also, this isn't a huge piece of tissue paper, so it's a lot easier to manage and work with. And then I let that base coat of Mod Podge dry just a little bit before then sealing my whole project with a solid coat of Mod Podge over the entire surface. This way you just have a nice even sheen and finish. This is matte Mod Podge, which I feel is best for a project like this. I think it would be silly to paint something with matte chalk paint and then seal it with a shiny finish of Mod Podge, so I like matte Mod Podge on these crafts. But that's it. That's my little upcycled piece of scrap wood using a couple of different techniques that I hope you enjoyed watching. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use this little scrap wood piece of decor for, but I'm sure I will come up with something. Okay, bear with me on this craft, everyone, because usually when I start a project, I have a clear direction of where I'm going. I may not have like all of my decisions on the final touches sorted out, like what color of ribbon or other small embellishment I'm going to use, but I generally know what I'm making. But on this craft, that could not have been further from the truth. I started by wanting to give a texture effect to this 3-section wooden pumpkin cut out from Dollar Tree using cardboard, and I ended up making a wreath, and here's how that happened. So I just took a piece of computer paper and pressed it over those 3 sections of that pumpkin and cut them out to make a template that I then traced onto some cardboard. You want to use corrugated cardboard because that's where your texture is going to come from. I saw something on Pinterest that inspired me that looked like it was made with this, or maybe it was made with corrugated scrapbook paper, I'm not sure, but I decided to go for it. So after I had traced my template out and then cut out my 3 sections of cardboard, I then separated the layers of cardboard. So to do that, I just used a pen blade. I found that easiest if you have any other tool that you'd want to use, or even like a safety pin to help kind of peel away just that top layer, but you want to leave the wavy corrugated center part intact, and that's what's going to give us our texture on this pumpkin. And then once I had separated all of my cardboard layers, which took longer than I thought it would, but I got it done, I just stained with this DecoArt wood tint, I think in walnut, I'm not sure. It was like a really dark wood tint just on the separating dividing lines between the 3 sections. I also layered in some olive green acrylic craft paint just to make it not as brown. You could probably skip that step, but then I used that same olive green craft paint to paint my 3 sections of cardboard. And so you just want to give a solid coat of green paint to each piece of cardboard. And yes, they will maybe start to wrinkle up a little bit, but that's not a big deal because we're going to glue them back down. And then I also distress them a little bit with just a piece of a clean dish sponge, which has been my go-to Sometimes I feel that using a piece of a clean dish sponge is easier than doing the dry brush method with a paintbrush, just depending on the project. But I think this was my folk art home decor chalk paint in the color Parchment. It's just like a nice off-white color. And then once all that paint had dried, I applied a nice coat of Eileen's tacky glue. You could use E6000, even Elmer's school glue I'm sure would work. And I just spread everything out with a brush. I was pretty generous with the glue. And then just set each piece of cardboard right in place where they belong on the pumpkin. Then to finish off the pumpkin, I just hot glued some raffia around the stem. Now this takes a little while, and be sure to use that silicone fingertip protector because that'll save your fingertips here. But just wrap that raffia all the way around the pumpkin stem and kind of secure it with just a tiny dab of hot glue as you go. And so as I was wrapping the stem with raffia, I'm like, what am I gonna do with this pumpkin cutout? Like I can only stick pumpkin cutouts in so many places in my house. And I have this cheese box that's sitting in the corner of my craft room, and it holds Christmas ribbons and miscellaneous Christmas supplies. And it's just been staring at me, waiting for the right project. And today that right project came along. So I just took the lid off this cheese box, and I think I got this at a thrift store, like check thrift stores, garage sales, but it's just a wooden circle that I flipped upside down, and I knew I did not want to do anything permanent to this cheese box lid because it's like a really good box, right? And I want to be able to use it for other projects. So everything that I did to the wood on this was just temporary. So I made a cardboard liner for the bottom rim of the lid so that everything that I was going to hot glue down ended up getting hot glued to the cardboard piece. So I wasn't hot gluing directly onto the wood. And then I secured that cardboard piece into the rim of the wooden lid with some heavy, heavy duty double-sided sticky tape. So I got this on Amazon. I think it's just like really heavy duty double-sided, or like you could use carpet tape, just something really strong that's gonna stick, but isn't gonna do permanent damage to the wood. And then from here, I just had fun embellishing. I'll probably just speed this up and probably play music for you guys so you can just watch, but I just added a bunch of raffia and some faux greenery. And then I had in my craft stash some pine cones and some faux acorns that I added in as well. I just had fun creating like a little bed of greenery and raffia for my pumpkin to sit in. But then it was time to get the pumpkin to stick to the lid without it falling over when I hung it up. So for that, I just grabbed a couple of tumbling tower pieces and that same heavy duty double-sided tape, and I stuck that to the back of the pumpkin, and that created a little riser so that the pumpkin would sit nicely and stick to my cheese box lid. Then to hang it up, dollar store sells this wired jute rope stuff. It's just a natural material cord with floral wire running through it. I just wrapped that around the lid, gave it a few twists at the top, and then I hung it up. So a super unique door hanger, fall wreath. And then just to be a little extra, after I made my little garland out of paper bags, I decided to drape that over the door hanger, and I thought that gave it a really extra special touch and looked really nice together. So there you have it, a few of my fall upcycle crafts new for this year. I do hope you enjoyed watching these tutorials as these crafts came together, and maybe you'll be inspired to make something for yourself. Until next time, happy making!